It's the How to Write Funny podcast. I'm Scott Tickers, and I'm talking this week with Liana Spiro, who at the time of our conversation was president of the Harvard Lampoon. Hi, Liana. Will you tell us what you're doing right now in comedy?
Well, I'm in charge of the Lampoon, the Harvard Lampoon. So, on the one hand, that's just like I'm running a college humor magazine, so are like hundreds of other kids across America. But on the other hand, I've got like 60 crazy boys who are constantly doing crazy things all day that I have to tell not to do those things. So that's what I'm doing on the day to day.
So you're like the,
Um,
the den mother.
yeah, like I wish it wasn't that, but sometimes it feels like that. We publish 5 magazines a year, and we spend all of every day in our building in Cambridge, Massachusetts, like making jokes.
So it's mostly just goofing around, and then occasionally you put out a publication.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not that we like don't want to write the magazine. We actually write way more than can fit in each issue of the magazine. Um, but I think the value of the Lampoon is in the people that you spend time with and not necessarily like the actual publication.
Yeah, so let's dig right into that whole gender issue. Obviously, it's a stereotype of comedy, especially that it's very male dominated and has been for a long time. And the Harvard Lampoon, especially, is seen as a bastion of blue blood privilege and whatnot. So,
Great.
what is it like? Is it a meritocracy at the Harvard Lampoon? And that word is so loaded because if you're only looking at submissions, but you're a blue blood boy, who went to prep school, you're going to look at other submissions and you're going to say, "Oh, this one's really good because it's written by another blue blood boy," even though you don't know on paper if it's a he or she or where they went to school or whatever. So, how do you navigate all that when dealing with gender balance in an organization like the Harvard Lampoon?
Yeah, the Lampoon has changed a lot, and we've got, strong women around the castle, and we have for several years now. I think, like, of the last 5 presidents, 3 of them have been women. So, there are women in charge and women running the place, but you're right, the sheer number of, like, Massachusetts Catholic boys can sway the room when we're looking at comedy submissions, like, more than it should. Uh, so I don't know. In my 3 years here, I've seen it get better. And I think we're all, like, everyone here is very aware of this more than people perceive us as being. And we have, like, long conversations about how to make it better. Right now, our process for admission is totally blind. It's just based on the writing um, that you produce at the end of the semester. And it hasn't always been that way. And we are talking about, ways we can maybe make that better, because you absolutely got at the core of the problem. It's just like people choosing that Simpsons sensibility over and over again that comes from Eastern USA.
Yeah, so when you're saying the selection process, you mean people who are already part of the Lampoon who are submitting work for the publication. You're looking at that just on merit.
Yeah, it's just on the writing alone. And we give people like a whole semester where we're really willing to like help everyone get their comedy chops in order and be able to put down on the page like the best jokes that they could make. One way I think we've gotten better is that like the Lampoon magazine itself is written in kind of a weird format that most people are unfamiliar with. Like it's not satire, it's not like The Onion, and it's also not like it's just like small dialogue pieces, like excerpts from what people would think is a funny movie, or these like prose pieces that are like a page long about like a funny character. And almost no one has written comedy in this format before when they arrive to Harvard. So helping people like learn to write in that way, but then being more open, I think, to people who have like cool ideas for new ways to write is a way that we can be like more open to people coming from all areas of the country and all backgrounds.
Yeah, and I appreciate that actually. I've always liked that the Lampoon was just so open-ended in terms of format. Like the piece on any page could just be any kind of format and you don't know what it's going to be. And
Mm.
I appreciate that they haven't succumb to what I can only imagine is the pressure to be more like The Onion, because every college humor publication now is basically The Onion.
Yeah, that's true. We get that pressure from all sides. I think it's like harder when you open a Lampoon, you literally have to like read the whole page of comedy to get the joke, which isn't true in most ways that we're receiving like comedy in the world today. So that off-puts people. And then like a lot of the magazine is like okay, and you have like the five gem pieces in each issue, and some of it's not great. But yeah, you really have to like actually read it and maybe read like a whole issue before you start to get the sensibility, and that puts people off.
Yeah, but that's like old school humor writing. That's like, from the early 20th century, like humor pieces that maybe don't have a headline that's hilarious, but it's very literary and you actually have to read it.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. We're also like pretty strict on ourselves about that in a way that you might not think. Like we, especially when you're writing pieces to be considered for like entry into the Lampoon, we don't let you use like any pop culture reference or really anything with a political stance. We make them shy away from. I think we just want it to be like a pure subversion and not dependent on like the reader being familiar with some like even another literary work is kind of dicey.
Has that always been the case at the Lampoon?
No, it hasn't. And when you go back to like the 60s and the 50s, it's a lot of humor that's very Harvard specific. And it's interesting that that change happened, that now we feel like we're writing to this audience of the entire world. And so we don't make jokes about like the Harvard dining hall services. But I
Well,
think
that's
it's good
smart.
because, yeah,
You think it's
yeah,
good?
yeah, I think it's good. Those jokes get really boring. There are other like publications on campus that do jokes about like life at Harvard, and it's just it's just like new kids coming in every 4 years and then making the same jokes about like how bad the food is.
Yeah, you've been there 3 years, so I'm sure you're jaded and you just see that happening over and over.
I hope I don't come off that way, but that is how I feel a little bit.
You come off a little bit, not jaded, but just like really experienced, even though you're young and you're still in school. But you've been doing it for 3 years. That's a long time to be running a humor publication.
Yeah, well, I haven't been in charge the whole time, but it has been like when I look back on my college experience, it will be the Lampoon, like maybe even more so than it will be Harvard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are pros and cons to
So was
that.
it your doing to decide to go with evergreen content, or is that
No,
something that's evolved over time?
no, but it's the person in charge who nixes every individual like joke about a movie that just came out. So I
Right.
guess I'm perpetuating that standard, but that's been the case since probably the 80s or the 90s even.
That's great. So speaking of perpetuating the standard, do you ever feel like you're in charge of an institution like a museum piece and you have to be really careful, or are you just like, what the hell?
I try as hard as I possibly can to be like, what the hell? That's like the great privilege of the Lampoon is that it would be like pretty hard for me to actually tank it and end it all. And it's really had low points in its like long history, and it's had high points too. And I think like better to, you know, have a disaster when you were like trying to do something great than to just sit on it for a year and like let it be, middle of the ground stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
I couldn't agree with you more.
yeah. Uh, but that's like easy to say. Obviously, that's the right answer.
Right, no, but it's hard in practice.
Yeah.
So tell me about the process that you alluded to where you try to help writers get the best jokes for their piece. What does that process look like?
Yeah, so at Harvard, we call like the process of trying to join an organization is called comping, and you are like a comper for a semester. And we pretty much have office hours twice a week where the writing staff is there and compers come in with whatever they've written, which is usually like at the start, just like onion headlines. And we have to be like, this is great, but no. Um, and yeah, I would say it's not that we're trying to make these people funnier. It's just that we're trying to like help the ones who are funny like be able to write in the funny style of the magazine because it's kind of equalizing actually that no one you've never written a Lampoon piece before you comp the Lampoon. That's like the beautiful equalizing thing. um so that's what it is. It's really like more boring than you would think. It's like formatting help, like can you split page of text into paragraphs for me is something I say a lot. Um, and then at the end, hopefully they have like six good pieces that they submit, and the Lampoon gets together and like very seriously talks about these six pieces for a day. And then we've got our new class at the end.
But you don't know who wrote those. It's all sort of blind, you said.
Yeah, we do everything we can to really just focus on the writing and not the people. And obviously there's like this unintentional bias where or just like the whole thing is not pure. Like if you have a friend who's on the Lampoon who talks about how much they love it all the time, like you're maybe going to spend that extra hour and write that extra piece to like get on the Lampoon. There are all these things we have to try to be aware of and counteract. Um, but but hopefully if we're just funny in public ways, we can get people who aren't already like the roommates of people on staff.
Yeah, ideally. So tell me about how the Lampoon is now in terms of a stepping stone to a career in comedy, because in the past it was always kind of the only route, and there are so many more routes now, and I'm wondering if things have changed for the Lampoon.
Yeah, I think what we have to focus on is just like using our time at the Lampoon to like become funnier. And ideally, like the idealist view of the Lampoon is that it is not just that alumni will like hand us jobs because we were on the Lampoon, but actually that because we were on the Lampoon, we can like write funny packets for those jobs is like the way of looking at it in a hopeful way. Um, so that's what people here are focused on is just becoming funnier and then trusting that that will help them out maybe more so than any like alumni of the organization will. But the alumni do come back sometimes and hang out, and it's just like cool to be in their presence. But no one's like handing out jobs here. I wish they were.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, almost no matter where you come from, you still have to show up with a good submission or a good packet. But obviously,
Yeah,
having the
that's my.
Lampoon on your resume doesn't hurt.
Yeah, you hope it doesn't hurt.
I'm sure it doesn't. So, how did you get where you are? Like, where did you come from, and what kind of comedy background did you have? And were you always consumed with a burning desire to be the president of the Lampoon, or is this something you fell into, or something in between?
Yeah, I did not come from a very funny household. I don't think I grew up in Philadelphia and I didn't grow up watching television, like never saw The Simpsons. Didn't spend a lot of time thinking about jokes until probably high school. And then yeah, the burning desire consumed me. And I think I like read Tina Fey's book, Bossy Pants, and she's like half of every writer's room is like improvisers from Second City, and the other half are Harvard Lampoon nerds. And it was like clear to me even then that I could never be the improviser, so I had to be the nerd. So then I don't know. Here I am at Harvard now.
So, how did that burning desire get started? Do you think just from reading that book?
No, I started watching SNL first thing. And I at one point, like maybe in 10th grade, I went back and watched like every episode of SNL starting in like I think then it was maybe even just since 2000.
Hmm.
And I like loved it. Like everything in my life revolved around Saturday Night Live for a while there.
Now, how old are you when this is happening?
Like late, I was probably 14 or 15, which is later than most people in my generation discovered SNL.
Well, you just said you didn't watch TV. Was that something your parents just kept you away from, or?
Yeah, we never had cable. For a few years there, we like you could turn our TV on and it like would only play static.
That's
So I
great.
think I think that was part of it too, is that when I finally discovered it, it felt more rebellious than it does for most people. That was part of the excitement for sure.
Yeah, so you liked the idea that people were doing comedy and having fun doing it, or did you think it was entertaining? Because a lot of people, they get into comedy because they think it's entertaining to them. Other people want to create the comedy. I feel like that's two different things.
Yeah, I think it started with that it was entertaining. I think I always thought of myself as becoming a writer, um, but not a funny one until I found comedy more entertaining than anything else I was reading or watching. And then eventually, like if you love it enough, you're gonna sit down and try to do it eventually. Even though I feel like that takes a lot of courage for people and can take a while. Um, yeah, then I started like trying to write like stand-up bits or whatever in high school. Obviously not performing it anywhere, but
Now,
yeah.
why is
And then
that? Why is
here,
that obvious? Just because you just weren't the type in your mind?
yeah, it was like a hard transition to make from like middle school Hermione Granger nerd. I went to like the same school throughout middle school and high school with all the same kids. So that's like a hard transition to make when you decide all of a sudden that you want to be funny.
Yes.
um, and no one is like ready for you to be funny or expecting you to be funny. So it took a while. But we got there eventually. And then by the time I got here, I was like ready to make jokes and people were ready to hear them.
So you just wrote jokes like in solitude or in private and didn't really show them to anybody in high school?
Yeah, I would like try to write monologue jokes for like back then it was like late night with Jimmy Fallon. I would like watch his monologue every day and try to write jokes. And then I had like some friends who were guys who are now all at Tisch, of course, who would film sketches and would like allow me to hold the boom while they filmed their sketches. And I would just like be around them but be too scared to ever like pitch a joke. I remember that was like a okay time. Uh, but it was nice to like learn from them, I suppose.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting because there we sort of get into the gender thing again, where boys, according to studies, are raised to be more aggressive and be more out there, to raise their hands, to speak up, to try stand up. And girls are raised to be quieter, more demure, and like hold the boom but not speak up or whatever. So, were you kind of aware of that dynamic then? Or
Yeah,
were
I think I definitely was. Yeah.
but you were in it and you couldn't really change it. You couldn't, all of a sudden not be afraid, but you just like were getting as close to it as you could, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I was just like too scared to even say that I wanted to be funny. Is like hard to say. And even
Wow.
today when people are like, "Oh, what do you want to do?" It's like so I think that like a lot of I mean, maybe I think there are other women out there my age who would agree with this, is it's like difficult to even just say I want to be a comedy writer and I see guys around me who can obviously that's like not that crazy of a thing to say, but they can just say that with like total confidence.
Yeah. So when did you actually start showing your comedy to other people?
um, it happened in high school, like in like I was in the like advanced math classes or something like that. Like the classes where the real class nerd was not there, or sorry, not nerd, like jokester. What's the word I can't think
The
of?
class clown?
The class clown. The classes where the real class clown wasn't there because they were like not in advanced calculus or whatever.
Okay.
I would start to like make jokes, and I think I was like the first place I was funny was probably math class in like 11th grade, and then um and then my school did this thing where in January you could take like extra like a fun class for the month. So I took this like stand-up comedy class with all my high school peers, and I did this bit about like a man with one testicle, which was very, I think, just like no one expected me to be making jokes still at this point. That was like my big splash that I made in high school, was doing this stand-up routine um, in class.
And
But
go
then,
and going for the shock humor on top of that.
of course,
Must have
yeah,
been super surprising.
yeah, I don't stand by any of those jokes. But the
Nor
teacher of
should
this
you.
class was very encouraging, and he was like, you can do this. You are good." So that was nice. And then I don't know. I like set my sights on the Lampoon. Even from there, um, it's just clear. Like it's just clear that something, and I can feel confident saying that my hunch was right. Like something really cool is happening here, and it's like a cool group of people that can make each other smarter and funnier.
Yeah, so had you seen the Lampoon? Because I know it's distributed on some newsstands here and there, or how did you discover it or find it?
Online, we have like a very bare bones website. I think we had a even worse website back then where you would like go to the website and one random Lampoon piece would be there and then you'd have to like refresh it to find another piece. So you could
Oh, that's
never
funny.
yeah, like total chaos. But one of my friends who I was who was on staff at the Lampoon with me, when she was in high school, she figured out like the HTTP code for each piece and like wrote it down. So when she wanted to go read her favorite piece, she would like know what to type in. I was not that smart,
Oh,
but
that is so funny.
yeah, I started reading the magazine like when I eventually like got into Harvard and visited the campus. I like scrounged for all the lampoons I could find, and started reading those. And I remember like it, you might read a piece and it's like really not funny, and then you just have to read another piece until you find one that is funny and then is also funny to you. Um, but eventually you get like a handle on the sensibility, and I don't know. Now there are all these like cool stories about pranks we do online also that are hopefully attracting like 11th graders to want to join as well.
Yeah, so let's go back to 11th grade for a second. So that math class, that's like the first time that you were performing comedy, it sounds like, saying it out loud and coming up with it on the spot.
Yeah, I was like in elementary school I was really into math. I had some great math teachers, so I got myself in this like continued like accelerated math track. We didn't have APs at my high school, but it was just like the advanced math. And then by the time I was in high school, I was like could no longer like do the math easily and was like actually really struggling in these math classes. And this was just like great fodder for comedy always for me to be in the back of the classroom being like I don't understand and I'm like crying all the time. Those were like easy jokes to make. Yeah.
But it must have felt really good to like actually perform a little bit and get some reaction from the class, right? Because I mean, most stand-up comedians, most comedy people have that experience of being the class clown, and that's really informative to them is when they get that experience and they know, oh, this is great when you get laughs.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a great setup in high school because you're all in this together. Like, no one wants to be there. Everyone is desperate for any entertainment they can get. You have this, like natural leader at the front of the room who everyone wants to be like taken down and destroyed. It makes sense why people like that's when the light bulb goes on for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's really the perfect tinderbox for comedy because you're not supposed to be goofing around is the other great thing about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Maybe I
great.
should go to class here more.
Yeah, so tell me about that. How did you get into Harvard? I know it's hard to get into. And then what are you majoring in and stuff?
Yeah. I think I was just like one of those well-rounded kids and probably had like a good essay, and like hopefully good recommendation. I don't know how I got here. It's like pure luck how any of us are here. Um, and now that I'm here, I have semi taken advantage of the academics, I would say. I majored in like film, which was like an attempt to like catch up to all those kids who were at Tisch, which I can now say like failed miserably. I really, have like average skills with a camera and a mic. Um, but I guess it was actually good to major in film. Like at Harvard, everyone here, the like 10 people who are doing film in each class are all doing like really serious like drama features or like documentaries about like a death in their family. And so I I went to a lot of screenings where it would be like 2 hours of really serious films and then my film would play at the end and my film is like something like Hillman and Sophia go to the supermarket and it's like a 10-minute sketch about my friends like rambling around a supermarket. So it was like very easy to be the one person who's trying to make comedy in Harvard film. Um
That's
but then
perfect.
other
So
yeah,
you really
yeah.
stand out.
Yeah. So, I think it was good. Uh yeah, that's
Is
what I've done here.
is it expensive?
Is Harvard expensive? Yes. But they have good financial aid.
I think that's another thing that people think about when they think about, oh, she's at Harvard because her parents are rich. But a lot of people forget that, there are people of all economic backgrounds at Harvard who did well in school because because they're a wealthy school, they can afford to give out financial aid of all kinds. And that happened to me. I went to expensive private schools because I was a good student at college. I flunked out
Hmm.
of high school, but I was a good student at college.
Well,
And they, those some of those bigger schools are actually easier to get into when you're poor and you do well in school because they're trying to fill this diversity category.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
I don't know if that's where you fell, but I'm curious.
there's a lot going on about the diversity at Harvard right now. I won't get into that. But yeah, I mean, they can give you whatever money you need. And I think the pool of people, like the number of kids that apply to Harvard every year is truly astounding. They can pick whoever they want and they have the money to like get those people here, is the way I see it. I think the student body here is like incredibly diverse and definitely not just like a bunch of rich kids. The Lampoon, however, this is another wall we're up against is that the kids who get to Harvard, there are so many resources here from which you can learn so much and so many amazing things to do. And the kids who are going to be like, fuck it, I'm going to spend all my time like sitting in this comedy castle do tend to be kids who come from like a more privileged spot because you could see it as like a waste of your time at such a like amazing academic institution. So that's another thing we're struggling with. But we do have like people on staff who are also pre-meds or like interested in the sciences. They're just far outnumbered.
Yeah. Do you have any like poor kids or, kids from other countries or any?
Yeah, yeah.
And do you do anything to reach out to those people to try to diversify?
Yes, we do a lot. We have been trying to the comp process of getting on, we've made a lot less time intensive because I think that was like an unintentional barrier to members of the Harvard community was that to get on the Lampoon you had to spend like hours and hours writing. And now I think you can do it also while like still going to your classes. And we reach out like individually to certain communities on campus who we feel like otherwise would have a harder time finding us. Um, but yeah, it's a continued struggle. And I guess the flip side though is that we have so much power here. We have these like, maybe not real gates into the industry, but it feels like we do. Um, and if we can like make ourselves better and make a difference down here at this level, that can like have an even bigger impact on the industry above us.
Yeah, clearly. So tell me more about the ratio of like people who try to be on the staff of the Lampoon and the people who get in. Is it still really difficult to make that grade?
Yeah, I mean, we just started the comp for this semester and we had 150 people, I think, like start the process. Obviously, they'll dwindle on their own because they're busy with other things.
Sure.
But usually we don't have like a quota. It's just however many we think are funny. Like between 4 and 7 or 8 get on each semester. Uh, so it's not very many people. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a pretty crazy small ratio. So tell me about the castle. So this is a fun thing that maybe a lot of people don't know about. I was just there the other day because I was trying to find you to interview you, and obviously we didn't meet up in person. But it's a cool, fun building, and what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, you should come back sometime. I'll give you a tour.
All right,
Um,
I've already had a tour, but I'd love another one.
oh, good, good, good. Okay, well, I'm just gonna say all the things that person said to you. So,
I
and
forgot them all, so it would be good.
okay, good. Don't say any here. It's called we call it a mock Flemish castle, which really is just nonsense. But what's cool is that the Lampoon was founded in 1876 and had just like an office in the Harvard Student Center. And the castle was built in 1909 by this architect Edmund March Wheelwright, who was one of the founders of the Lampoon. So it was built for the organization, and like by this time the Lampoon already had like this thriving like comedy culture. It already had like institutional lore. So it's just like a cool building that was built exactly for the purpose that it still serves to this day. Um, I think the building also, though, like beyond being a cool building, is so crucial to the Lampoon. Like, honestly, the thing that makes us different from other college humor magazines is that we just have this space to spend like all your time in, and this space that everyone is spending all their time in. And so it just makes the organization into more of like a tight knit group of people than it would be if we were just meeting like twice a week.
Yeah, so do they like live there and hang out there and sleep there and stuff, or are they just hanging out there a lot?
Yeah, no one is sleeping there in like a sanctioned way,
Ah, but they
but
do sleep there on occasion.
yeah, on occasion.
All right.
But yeah, it's like if you go there during the day, there'll be people hanging out and like doing schoolwork, maybe. And then if you go there in the afternoon, there'll be people hanging out and like definitely not doing schoolwork. And then, sometimes we'll eat dinner there together as a staff. And then every night there are people there just like truly doing nothing. But, in that doing nothing, they're like becoming funnier or joking around at least.
Right. No, a big part of getting better at comedy, I think, is being around other people who are trying to get good at comedy and just joking around and trying to be smart alecky with each other. Don't you think that's pretty important?
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest thing that the Lampoon gives to its members is the community of other funny, smart people
Yeah.
to joke around with.
And like you said, other people who are alumni will come by and hang out. So you feel like you probably have this rich, legacy or depth of people who are part of that same peer group.
Yeah, that's the other thing is that people join the Lampoon with no intention of going into comedy. Like still today, I know that's not what people assume, but most of our members like don't plan to become comedy writers. Um, and then slowly throughout their like 2 or 3 years at the Lampoon, they can see alumni come back who are seem like relatively happy and successful, and it slowly legitimizes that like career, I think.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Like, why would you want to be a doctor or a lawyer unless there was intense parental pressure when you could be a comedy writer instead?
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely
So
definitely how it feels.
do you just edit now, or do you write some stories yourself?
No, I write. There's less editing that happens here of our actual writing than at like a newspaper, I think. We'll like offer suggestions to each other and we're all reading each other's stuff, but I'm definitely not like the tastemaker of the magazine. I think, for its betterment. So I'm still writing for the magazine, and I don't know, really like all that's different about my life for being president is like dealing with everyone's like problems every day that mostly don't have to do with the magazine.
Really? So like personal problems and stuff, or like problems getting through college bureaucracy, or what?
Yeah, like all of the above. Like we have advertisers sometimes who are annoyed that like the magazine's coming out late, or like yeah, personal problems come up in a group of like 40 college students, or really
Sure.
anytime anyone on the outside has like an issue with the Lampoon, which is like pretty frequently. It's me that has to like talk to them for a long time, and calm them down.
So
Uh,
how are you managing that? Have you always been good with people? Have you ever had like management or leadership experience, or you just like find yourself thrust into this position unprepared?
No, I feel pretty good about it. Like a summer camp kid. I went to camp for like 12 years growing. I like still go to camp, full disclosure there. And I think that is like
But you're going
what
now to be like a camp leader, right? You're not like one of the
yeah,
campers,
yeah,
right?
I'm not campers.
Okay, just checking, just checking.
Yeah, and camp is great for like I'm definitely an introvert, and the only reason I can like talk to people in a coherent way today and like help them in a kind way is because of camp. So, and the Lampoon is a lot like camp too. It's like people who are essentially children like hanging out all the time.
Right. And was it a particular type of themed camp with a certain subject matter that was kind of the thing, or was it just like a general like summer camp that you
No,
went
just
to?
like classic canoeing, camping, summer camp.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a very East Coast thing that so many people do.
Yeah, it is.
When you do write, does your writing go through the same selection process as everyone else's? Like the group of writers like read it and assess it? Or are you the only person like assessing everyone's work and deciding what's going to be run?
No, so we have each issue of the Lampoon has an issue editor. There are actually two. There's one person who edits the writing, in theory edits, and one person who edits the artwork and like lays the issue out. So, and those are all seniors. Um, we pick like 5 seniors each year who each get to issue edit an issue. So my issue will come out this winter, and that then I'll have like full control over everyone's writing. But really, I think this is a good thing. Like each senior gets a chance to like make whatever they want out of the Lampoon. It can be really crazy. Sometimes it is really crazy. But they get to like choose the theme of the issue, choose what pieces go in, and write like the introductory letter, which is called the Vanitas. So really, they're in control of that. Yeah,
So only seniors edit issues.
yeah, it's a very yeah, only seniors edit issues. It's the Lampoon is definitely a culture where like seniority is valued, probably more than most college clubs surrounding it.
Is it a fraternity or sorority kind of a thing?
No, I mean I'm like contractually obliged to say no to that. We're not a fraternity sorority. Um, we are not, but it is that I think it serves a similar purpose in people's lives where it's like those are your friends. Your like new friendships are almost in a negative way defined by like the people who are accepted onto the organization each semester,
Right.
and it can like take over people's lives in the same way that I don't know, but I assume maybe a sorority or a fraternity could.
Yeah. So, like you said earlier, you really are more the den mother than anything else as the president. I didn't really realize that. So, you basically manage the group of people like any leader would, and then the editing of an issue is a separate thing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
how do you like? Is there a faculty advisor that's like above you, or is it just like Lord of the Flies, just kids leading kids over there?
It's pretty Lord of the Flies. Um, yeah.
Wow, that's really surprising. So there isn't an official faculty advisor or adult associated with the Lampoon?
They're all right. We have a faculty advisor, but I truly don't know who it is.
Oh,
We
okay.
really interface with them. I think it's a alumni of the Lampoon who now works at Harvard. We have like a board of trustees who like keeps the endowment safe. um,
Yeah, because there's like, yeah, like you said, an endowment, there's a pile of money that probably pays the electric bill of the castle and stuff, right?
yeah, the endowment is there just in case, the shit really hits the fan.
Yeah.
Uh, and we've got like some nice alumni who are not here physically, which I think is important, but they have phone calls like twice a year to talk about whether the money's gotten bigger or smaller.
Huh.
um, yeah, so that's nice, and they're like a nice resource for like guidance to members, but for the most part it's Lord of the Flies, I would say.
Well, good luck. So, as, let me ask you about some of the other projects that the Lampoon does besides the magazine, because in the past they've done parodies of other magazines and, like you said, doing some online pranks. What's the genesis of those, and what's your involvement in getting those going?
Yeah, so if you picture like that we're all spending like 80 hours a week in the castle just hanging out, like probably once every like 10 hours someone has like a great idea for like a parody that we should do, and then we all get really excited about that for like 10 minutes. And then most of the time it like peters out and we get distracted by like a new thing that we found funny. But once every like few months or so, the project actually has steam and we go through with it. Usually it's like a parody. We do a lot of like small parodies of like programs for events that are happening on Harvard's campus, or at the start of each semester we'll write parodies of like syllabuses for classes, and then we'll go to that class and hand out this fake syllabus on the first day. Things like that. And then there are a few like established, like every year we publish a parody of the Harvard Crimson, the school newspaper. But even then, like, we make it fun and different each year. This past year we published 3 consecutive days in a row of fake crimsons. So we took a fun thing and we like hit it over the head until it was no longer fun anymore and everyone was just begging for the real news.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. What are some of the internet pranks that you did?
Gosh, we did this Mark Zuckerberg prank a few years ago when Zuckerberg was speaking at Harvard's commencement, and we hacked into the Crimson's website. The commencement day is like a huge day for the Crimson because they publish their big graduation issue, and they're all very excited about it. They've worked very hard on it. We hacked into their website and replaced all their very serious headlines with very silly ones about like Mork Zinkeltonk, who like stole Facebook from the Kayak twins. Um, I think writing those headlines was like one of the hardest times I've laughed at the lamp inside the Lampoon.
Yeah, I saw some of that. It really was just totally goofy and just so mean. I mean, it was just great. It was a great
Thank
prank.
you. Thank you. And then this past year on commencement day, we hacked in again, and just put all these headlines up that were like, "We're so sorry for hacking in last year. We promise to never do it again."
Oh, that's
Uh,
wonderful. I didn't know about that one.
yeah.
So sometimes in the past, the Harvard Lampoon has done parodies that have done well, and like, isn't that part of where the endowment comes from? Like, wasn't the Board of the Rings book that Doug Kinney and Henry Beard wrote a Harvard Lampoon project that made a lot
Yeah.
of money and like built, created like the trust fund or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah. We try to set up a summer project each year so that we can just stay in the castle and not have to like uplift our lives to any other building. So in the past, like I think the most recent digital one we did like a parody of Huffington Post a few years ago that was like a website that was up on the internet for a few months. Like 2 summers ago, we filmed a web series for IFC, which was like delightfully like great.
What was
um,
that?
it was it was just like a 6 episode like web series about it was like about the staff of the Harvard Lampoon trying to make a web series is of course what we did. I think it's probably still up on IFC. And then this past year we worked with the National Lampoon, which has recently been like bought by some new comedy guys.
I think
On a
every that can be said of the National Lampoon every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, that's correct. We're hoping these guys are really like the guys, but who knows? um,
Are you aware of the fake National Lampoon, which is a product of Robot Butt, which is a comedy publication online?
no, that sounds amazing.
Check it out. It's really good. It's really good.
Wow.
They do fake posters of fake National Lampoon movies that are
Wow.
really like the verisimilitude is top notch. I don't know how they do it. Like that's like hard to do. Like create that kind of art, like '80s movie poster art. But they're knocking it out of the park. So, well, that sounds really cool. And so, as the president, do you sort of like decide who's going to staff these various projects and in what capacity, or are you just leading them? Or are you doing it all yourself, or like what's the general makeup of some of those external or extracurricular projects?
Yeah, all of the above. I guess I'm like the de facto editor of any like parodies we do, um, or like summer projects like that. The big thing with the summer project is like finding, someone who's willing to like fund us to live here over the summer, and that's been the job of the president. We always try to write like book parodies, or like we write the proposals for book parodies, is what I should say, and then our publisher like tells us why each one would be a failure. But even that is like fun to write the proposals.
Do you have
Uh,
a publisher that you would always go to, or are you talking about an agent?
yeah, yeah. I mean, we work with an agent at Simon and Schuster, or I mean, it's like I shouldn't even. It's not even fair to say that we currently work with her because she just says that every proposal is like not good.
Wait a minute,
But
is she an editor at Simon and Schuster, or is she like a literary agent?
she is a literary. She's a literary agent, the one that I've talked to. I think I've got this sorted out in my mind. And in the past, when we have done books with her, they've gone through Simon and Schuster.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Maybe Simon and
Okay.
Schuster has some sort of first look deal with the Harvard Lampoon, so she may be your agent. But I don't know. Maybe you should look into that because if Simon and Schuster is saying, "Nah, I don't like it," like your agent should take it elsewhere. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, clearly I have no idea how the publishing world works or any of this world,
Or
but
or maybe you realize like when Simon and Schuster says, "Nah, we don't think it's going to work," then you just figure that's like a vote of no confidence, and you decide, "All right, we're not going to do it."
yeah, we like tend to bounce back pretty fast when we're told that things aren't funny is maybe a good quality of the Lampoon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have no idea what's going on there with those books, I guess. Everyone tells us print is dead over and over again, and then we like hold up our most recent issue of the magazine and say it's not dead.
Yeah, but you still sell advertising primarily in print, right? Or do you have online advertisers?
No, the advertising is totally in print.
I mean, leave it to the Harvard Lampoon, I guess, to be perpetuating this ancient medium, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's such an old and storied institution.
Yeah, yeah, people are definitely buying into like you're right, the the tradition of the Lampoon more than they are like actually having their brand advertised in our magazine. But yeah, the magazine still is able to like pay for itself, which is obviously incredible. I don't know how much longer that will go, but people probably would have said that like 30 years ago, and here we are.
Yeah, but if it has this foundation, like all of these extra projects that you do are nice, but don't you kind of have this endowment that you can rely on for, let's say, living there in the summer, or is that just you can't tap into that under those circumstances?
Yeah, we try not to use the endowment for like paying for our food over the summer.
I see.
um, I wish we could. Yeah, but it's nice to know. Yeah, like the Lampoon's not going anywhere. It would take a lot of, um, it would take like a big fire to make the Lampoon go away at this point.
Yeah, and a lot of the interior of the castle is wood, so
Yeah,
it wouldn't survive well.
yeah. A lot of what I think about is like, is the castle going to burn down tonight? Every day.
Really.
Yeah.
So, what about you? What are your goals for after the Lampoon?
Yeah, it's starting to feel closer and closer.
Where are you,
Uh,
like a year away, or where are you?
yeah, well, in December I'll step down from being president. Hopefully if I make it till then. And then all of a sudden I'll have no responsibility in the Lampoon for the first time in what feels like so long. And then I graduate in the spring. So hopefully I'll, have like a nice bundle of pilots under my arm. I'm planning to go to New York and we'll see what happens from there.
So you're gonna pitch pilots for TV shows.
I mean, no, I'm gonna pitch like myself as like a abled body person who can like get coffee for people in a writer's room.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Well, that's smart.
yeah, but hopefully, like eventually convincing people to let me write for their show is the goal.
Okay, yeah, because when you said you'd have several pilots under your arm, maybe I misheard you. I thought maybe you'd have scripts for TV pilots that you wrote.
Yeah, well, I think that's what you like again, I really know nothing about this, but I think you have to like write pilots now and then you like show people your pilots and they're like, that's a great pilot. Like I'll hire you now or I'll rep you.
Yeah, no one will ever make it, but you seem talented, so I'll represent you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of how that goes. But do you have any assistance like getting out there and doing that stuff? Being able to tap into the collective wisdom of the alumni about how to go about that? Or are you literally just going to be like showing up in New York and cold calling agents or showing up at alternative stand up clubs or whatever?
Well, I actually think another like beautiful gift the Lampoon has given me is that I've been here for 3 years and I've watched like maybe you could say even like 4 or 5 years of graduating seniors who, half of them go to New York and half of them go to LA every year, and we just get to like watch what happens to them in kind of a fun way until it's like fun until it's you. Um,
Yeah, so without revealing names, if you don't want to, tell me like what some of their paths have looked like as they've left and what they've done and how they've succeeded or not.
Yeah, some of them like go off and they're writer's assistants. Um, some of them go off and like are repped and just dive right into like applying for jobs in writers' rooms, like with varying levels of success. My impression, and this may be wrong, but I feel very comforted by the fact that I feel like in the entertainment industry, you can be like fully unemployed for like 2 or 3 years out of college before anyone is like questions what you think you're doing. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah,
In
totally.
any other industry, like if you don't have a job in a year, it's like, you're a total failure. Like you absolutely have to find something new to do. And that's like probably how people who are unemployed for a year who are comedy writers like feel on the inside, but on the outside, no one is like, quite berating them yet.
Right,
Um,
because they're at least things are happening. Like if they get an agent, like that's a thing that feels
exactly.
like success, even though there's actually no money coming in. It's
Yeah,
not an
exactly.
actual job.
It's like you pay to perform once a week, but like at least you're,
Right.
you're like doing something. Yeah. So so that's been nice is to be able to watch those people. No like huge success stories, I suppose. Well, I don't know. There are like clearly people who are on the rise from the past few years. Um and yeah, it's nice to have like a community. Like when I move to New York, there will be like, I won't be without people who I can send stuff to and they'll tell me if they think it's funny or not. Like I mean like peers.
Yeah,
Um
yeah.
yeah. So that will be nice. Uh, yeah.
So it sounds like you have very realistic expectations for when you first leave the Lampoon. But like ultimately, what's your goal? Do you want to write for SNL, or do you want to create your own shows? Do you want to be in TV, or do you want to be writing prose or something?
Yeah, I think I want to write TV. I obviously don't know yet. I've only ever written these like prose pieces for the Lampoon. But yeah, I think I want to write TV. Of course I want to write for SNL, but that's just like saying that I like to drink water. Like that everyone wants to write for SNL, it feels like. Um but I think those like talk shows in New York, like I want to work somewhere where it's like the show must go on, like the audience is here. That's like exciting to me, I think. So we'll see. But again, I will work anywhere, like truly not going to be picky about it. Um, Anywhere I can be a writer or like one day, see myself being a writer would be great.
Awesome. Well, I wish you the best of luck. It sounds like you have a great head on your shoulders, and I'm sure you're going to do fine.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thanks for your time, Liana. Appreciate it. Thanks for listening to the How to Write Funny podcast. For more tricks, tips, and techniques for how to write comedy and more interviews with comedy professionals, visit howtowritefunny.com.